Today we're gonna create this easy DIY fall porch sign. Hey everyone, I'm Coral and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, click the subscribe button down below and hit the bell. That way you get new videos every week. On today's video, we're gonna create a DIY fall porch sign. I've been admiring the porch signs for all the different seasons on Instagram and Pinterest for a while now, and figured I would create one for our porch that I can share with you guys to make as well. This DIY is fairly quick and easy, and some of these things you might actually have on hand in order to create this yourself. Let's jump into the materials and then I will show you guys how to make this project. The first thing that you are going to need for this DIY project is some kind of wood plank. The wood plank that I chose, I bought at Lowe's. I didn't have to have it cut. It is 1 inch thick, 12 inches wide, and 48 inches tall, which is 4 feet. I wanted to find one that I didn't have to cut or put together. There's lots of different options out there at Lowe's or Home Depot or the different hardware stores that you can find. A lot of times they will cut them for you to the size that you want, but it was really easy for me to find this wood plank that didn't have to be cut and was about the length and the width that I needed it to be, so that was perfect, and this plank only cost me $10. The next material that you're going to need are wood letters. I bought these wood letters from Hobby Lobby. I wanted to make it for fall, so I just bought FALL in order to put on the sign. Next, you're going to need some paint. I decided to paint both the wood plank and the letters. You can also use a wood stain to do this. I wanted to do the wood plank like an off-white color, so the color that I ended up purchasing was from Valspar. It's called Swiss Coffee. I was just walking in Lowe's looking for a color, and I grabbed a couple different color samples to see what I thought that I would like, and this one is the one that stood out for me. I bought both of these paints in the sample size, which is the small half pint size that you can buy at the different stores if you're wanting to sample a different paint for your wall. It was a little over $3 for each of the samples of paint that I bought, so that was pretty much my cheapest way out. If you have paint at your house from a different project or anything like that that can certainly be used for this, you really don't need that much to cover the letters and the wood. And then I found a complementary brown color to do the letters in. This is the Valspar Humboldt Earth. I was looking for a soft brown color that would complement the off-white, and that one worked really nicely. Next, you're going to need a wood glue in order to put the letters on the wood plank. I bought Gorilla Glue because my mom uses that a lot with her projects, and I know that it works really well. I will say I didn't buy the clear version. I didn't see that on the aisle when I was looking in the store. Went back later and saw it and realized that that's the one that I should have picked. So I would advise you to get a clear version, and you'll see why later when I'm showing you how to make it, why you want the clear version. The next thing you're going to need is a paint marker or a Sharpie. Now this one can be optional, but for the small pieces that we're going to stencil or paint on in addition to fall on this sign will be much easier to do if you have a paint marker or a Sharpie than trying to brush the letters on with a paintbrush. Next, you're gonna need some printouts to use as a stencil. I wanted my sign to say happy fall, y'all. We live in Houston, which is in the South. I love the different seasonal signs that incorporate y'all into them, so I wanted my sign to say that. You can make your sign say whatever you want to add to fall. It can say hello fall, it can say happy fall, it can say happy fall y'all, just like mine, whatever you want it to say. So whatever additional words that you want to put on your sign, we're going to create a printout, and I will show you how to use that printout as a stencil. So all I did is pick the words that I wanted, found a font that I liked, and then I printed them out on just regular sheets of computer paper. So pick the other words that you want to add to the sign, and you're going to print those out and have those as a stencil. The next couple of items that you'll need are different miscellaneous items that you probably have lying around the house, but you're just going to need in order to make the project work. That's going to be a pencil, a ballpoint pen, some painter's tape, and a pair of scissors. And the last two materials are optional if you want to add a little extra fall decor to this sign, and that is burlap leaves. I bought these at the Dollar Tree and I mentioned them in my Dollar Tree fall decor video that I did a couple of weeks ago. I will link that right up here if you want to go check that out. And in order to put the leaves on the sign, you're going to need some Mod Podge. Once you have all your materials gathered, then it's time to get started creating this fall sign. Step one is to paint your wood items. You want to do this first so that they have time to dry in between. We're not using a ton of paint on them, so it doesn't take that long to dry in between coats. For the wood plank, I just laid it out on some newspaper. I didn't want to really cover this wood plank with a ton of paint. I wanted to give it a little bit of a rustic look. So as I was painting it, I just dipped my paintbrush in the paint, kind of wiped it off, and spread it around the plank with the brush just a little bit dry. You can certainly paint your plank to an opaque color if that's what you want, but I wanted the characteristics of the wood to come through a little bit and give it a little bit more of a rustic feel. So I did one very thin coat of the white paint on the plank, leaving a little bit of the wood to kind of show through, and then after that dried, I did a second coat on top of it, still wiping off my brush a lot, using it pretty dry to create kind of like more of a streaky look that shows the characteristics of the wood coming through. For the wood fall letters, I did want the paint to be opaque, so I did 2 even coats of the brown paint. Again, I just laid them out on some newspaper and gave them 2 good coats. You don't have to be super careful about how these look. We want this sign to be a little bit rustic anyway, so brush on some paint, make sure it's covered, and you're good to go. Step 2 is to plan out the spacing of your sign. After your plank and your wood letters have dried, what you want to do is you want to lay out the fall letters on your plank in order to space them out where you're going to want them to be. You're also going to need your paper printout of the other words that you're going to put on your sign to have here in order to help you plan out your spacing. Since my plank was only 4 feet tall, I kind of had to scrunch my letters just a little bit to get it all to fit, and I actually ended up reprinting my happy and y'all letters again because my original size that I wanted them was a little bit larger, but with the way that the fall letters fit on the plank, I had to shrink them just a little bit. What I did here is I spaced out where I wanted the happy and the y'all to go on the top and the bottom of the plank. I used just a little bit of painter's tape to paint it down, and then I adjusted the fall letters on the wood plank according to how I want them spaced out between each letter and between the 2 words at the top and the bottom. Once you have your letters all spaced out, then you're on to step 3, which is gluing the letters. Since I used Gorilla Glue in order to glue my letters on, you have to dampen one side of your project before you start putting on the glue. So I just took a small paintbrush and a bowl of water and dampened the back side of the letters before I put the glue on. Then I put the glue on. I was very careful to hold the letter up on the plank where I wanted it to go before I set it down. Then I set it down and gave it a little bit of a press, and then moved on and glued the rest of the letters. If you do choose to use Gorilla Glue like I did, I made the mistake on the F and the A by putting a little bit too much glue on there. Gorilla Glue expands whenever it is curing, so I had a little bit of an issue with some of the glue coming out from underneath the letters and getting on the sign. So if you're using that glue, then be careful of that. That is why I said earlier that if you're going to use Gorilla Glue, I recommend using the clear glue, unlike the original that I used, because it has a little bit of a yellow tint to it. Also for this step, if you're using Gorilla Glue, they want you to clamp down whatever you're gluing together, but they also say that you can use a heavy object in order to get the clamping effect. So I grabbed some extra tiles that we had from when we did the wood look tile in our house. They were just sitting in the garage, and I used those as my heavy objects to place on top of my letters to hold them down while they are being glued. You're supposed to do this for the first 1 to 2 hours. So I put these down and set a timer for 1 to 2 hours to let these cure with that heavy weight on top of it. Again, if you're using a Gorilla Glue like I did, it is going to continue to expand, especially with the weight on top of it. So I did go back and check every so often to look for the glue coming out from underneath the letters. And again, when I saw this, I took some Q-tips and wiped it up. And I also used some baby wipes in order to try to get it off of the sign. I did end up taking some of the white paint off, which I just touched up later in the end when I was done with everything, and it turned out fine. So if you mess up the paint by trying to get the glue off, you can always touch it up later. But like I said, I highly recommend using a clear glue so you don't have to worry about it quite as much. Once your wood letters have had about 1 to 2 hours to cure, then you can go ahead and add the stencil for the extra words on your sign. In order to create a stencil from this computer printed paper, what you're going to do is you're going to flip it over to the back side of the printed paper. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a pencil and you're going to scribble on the back of the paper everywhere where the letter would be. So you're pretty much going to color in and scribble on the whole entire word with pencil. Do this for all of the stencils that you are going to create. And then when you're done and you hold it up, you should see the scribbled pencil and be able to see the letters coming through to the back side, because we're going to use the pencil scribbles in order to mark on the wood. So once you've scribbled on the back side of your stencil, you're going to take your paper, space it out, and lay it on the sign wherever you're going to want the word to be. Again, I'm going to tape it down just a little bit with some painter's tape so that it doesn't move around. And then you're going to take a ballpoint pen and you're going to trace the outline of the word. As you are pressing down and tracing, you don't have to press too hard, don't worry about that. It's going to leave an imprint of the pencil line. So once you have traced the whole entire word and you pull your stencil off, you'll have a pencil outline of the word that you would like to paint onto your sign. After that, then you are going to take either your paint marker or your Sharpie, or if you choose to do a paintbrush and regular paint, and you are going to paint in the letter. All you have to do is follow the outline. That's why using a paint marker is really nice, because you can just draw the outline and then fill it in, and then you have a nicely painted word on your sign. Repeat this same process for any of the other words that you are adding onto your sign. After your stenciled and painted words have dried, then we're on to the optional step of adding some extra decor. Like I said, I'm going to add these burlap leaves that I got at the Dollar Tree to the sign. It's nice because it adds a little bit of extra texture and some color, because the colors that I had going on were very neutral, and so especially that orange leaf adds a little bit of a pop of color to it. So what I did is I took out the burlap leaves. They came with a wire attached to the back, and those were easy to just pull off. I placed them out on the sign to determine where I wanted them to be ahead of time. And I did leave some hanging off of the edge of the sign whenever I was spacing them out in order to get more on the sign, especially since some of the orange ones are really big. I ended up cutting off the edges of some of the leaves in order to have them on the sign, especially in places where they may not have fit. And then in order to adhere them to the sign, I added some Mod Podge with a paintbrush to the back of the leaf, placed it back on the sign where I wanted it, and then painted a layer of Mod Podge on top. The Mod Podge used in this way on top of the decor that you are adding to the sign helps it adhere and seal it onto your sign. Depending on what you add, you may only need one layer of Mod Podge on top of your decor or your leaves. I did 2 layers, so after I did the first layer, I gave it about 20 minutes to dry and then added a second layer of Mod Podge on top. I chose the matte finish Mod Podge, that way it doesn't dry to a shiny finish because my paint isn't shiny, and it dries clear, so there's not any need to clean it up afterwards. The next part is also an additional step if you would like to. Once you are completely done and everything is dry, you can seal your sign with a sealer. I have not done this yet. I probably will eventually so it doesn't fade and the paint doesn't wear off. If you do choose to do this, use a water-based sealer instead of an oil-based one. If you use an oil-based one, your paints can yellow, especially if you're using a white or an off-white. So make sure you use a water-based sealer if you are going to seal your sign. Then all you need to do is set it out on your porch for fall. You don't need a base for it. All you need to do is just lean it up against the wall. You can add a pumpkin or some other fall decor along with it in order to decorate your porch for fall. If you enjoyed today's video and are interested in other DIYs, click right up here for my DIY Quick Tips playlist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.